Welcome back to the Chattable podcast, where we learn real English in real life, enrich vocabulary, and feel proud. Picture Tom Cruise, right? He's strapping himself to the outside of like a military cargo plane.
Taking off at, 200 miles an hour?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or, imagine Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stepping up to a microphone, just knowing that the single sentence he's about to deliver could instantly wipe out, generate billions of dollars across global markets.
Right.
Today, we are looking at the exact language native English speakers use when the stakes are literally life, death, or massive financial ruin.
So we're really looking at the linguistics of pressure and survival here. When you're describing unprecedented challenges or shocking victories, relying on basic vocabulary like, it was hard or they succeed, well, it just kind of flattens the narrative.
Yeah, boring.
Exactly. It's boring. To communicate with real gravitas, you need phrases that trigger a physical response in the listener's brain. You want them to genuinely feel that crushing weight of a crisis or, the sudden visceral relief of an impossible victory.
Which is the core mission for this episode. We're decoding two highly visual, dynamic English phrases that capture these absolute extremes. So basically, this is a shortcut to sounding totally natural and sophisticated when you're discussing heavy pressures and surprising victories.
Right, because language is fundamentally physical. Even when we're discussing abstract concepts like economics or artistic struggles, human beings rely on, we call it embodied cognition.
Okay, let's unpack this. Embodied cognition. What does that actually mean?
It just means we use our understanding of the physical world, gravity, mass, momentum, to make sense of complex, invisible forces. And our first phrase is like a perfect case study in this phenomenon. The phrase is bear on.
Bear on. Okay, so to ground this in reality, let's look at the target sentence from our source material. It goes, the financial struggles of opera houses in big cities over the recent years are really bearing heavily on the niche art forms such as ballet and opera.
The linguistic mechanics here are super fascinating because to understand the modern usage, we have to isolate that root verb, to bear. Historically, this wasn't an abstract concept at all.
That's physical?
Very physical. It meant the act of supporting a massive, potentially crushing structural load. Just look at the architecture of a cathedral or a skyscraper.
Oh, right, like the pillars.
Exactly. The colossal weight of the roof and all the upper floors is constantly bearing down on the load-bearing walls and those pillars below. They have no choice but to support that continuous, exhausting gravitational pull.
So we take that literal architectural image of structural load and we apply a metaphorical shift. Because, the opera houses in our source sentence aren't dealing with physical roofs caving in.
Right, they're dealing with inflation.
Yeah, inflation, plummeting ticket sales, shrinking endowments. But by using the phrase bearing heavily on, the speaker forces the listener's brain to process that financial struggle as a literal, crushing physical weight. It's like wearing a backpack full of bricks.
A backpack full of bricks, yes. It's not just a gentle nudge. It translates a spreadsheet problem into a bodily sensation. You feel the strain. The financial deficit is exerting a heavy influence, an inescapable downward pressure on the ballet programs.
So the arts organizations are the pillars in that architectural metaphor.
Exactly. And they are buckling under the immense gravity of the economic reality.
It's a phrase that demands you recognize the sheer gravity and weight of a situation. We aren't talking about a temporary inconvenience here, like a delayed train is an inconvenience.
Right.
A massive structural deficit that threatens the existence of a century-old ballet company. There's a force that bears on the institution. The phrase itself just inherently carries gravitas.
Which is precisely what dictates the strict rules for when to use it in conversation. Because bear on carries this architectural, geological level of weight, it belongs exclusively in environments where the consequences are severe and undeniable.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we're talking about serious matters.
Yeah, macroeconomics, high-stakes business matters, legal settings. A defense attorney might stand up and say, "Your Honor, this newly discovered forensic evidence bears directly on my client's innocence."
Because it places an insurmountable pressure on the prosecution's case. And the source material actually provides another brilliant real-name example of this, moving from the courtroom to the global economy. It brings us back to Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve.
Yes. When the Federal Reserve makes the decision to raise national interest rates by even a fraction of a percent, the ripple effects are staggering. That abstract policy shift will bear heavily on the concrete decisions made by CEOs worldwide.
Like Tim Cook at Apple.
Precisely. The cost of borrowing capital suddenly spikes, which immediately changes how Apple budgets for future manufacturing costs, material acquisitions, everything.
So the Federal Reserve's policy is the heavy roof, and Apple's supply chain strategy is the load-bearing wall that has to adapt to support that pressure. It's a highly consequential dynamic. But wait, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
What if my friend is in a fantastic mood, and it's making me feel super happy? Like, their energy is contagious. Is their good mood bearing on me?
Oh, no. No, you absolutely cannot say that.
Really? Even though the influence is massive.
Yes, even then.
Yeah.
It represents a fundamental misunderstanding of the physics embedded in the language. The scale of the influence isn't the only variable. The direction of the force matters just as much.
Because bearing means pushing down.
Exactly. Gravity pushing down. A heavy burden. A good mood doesn't push down. It uplifts. It removes weight. If you tell an English speaker that a lighthearted, joyful feeling is bearing on you, it creates immediate cognitive dissonance.
It would sound like I'm being violently crushed by joy.
Right. It sounds totally out of place. The rule of exclusion here is absolute. Bear on is reserved for gravity, pressure, and serious consequences. You never use it for happy or superficial influences.
Okay, so bearing on sets the stage. It describes the crushing weight of the insurmountable. But, when immense pressures and heavy expectations are bearing on you, you're forced to make a move.
You are.
And sometimes you defy the odds entirely, which introduces our next phrase, pull it off. Let's look at how the source material uses this in the context of extreme cultural scrutiny. Here's the target sentence about the new movie, Michael.
Oh, the one about Michael Jackson?
Yeah, exactly. It says, in the new movie, Michael, about the late Michael Jackson, his nephew Jaafar had to work for 2 years to get the dance moves, voice, and mannerism right before he convinced the filmmakers he could pull it off. And he did, to raving reviews.
The historical origins of Pull It Off are, well, a bit more muddy than Bear On, but the visual background is incredibly sharp and dynamic. It brings to mind a stage performer executing an incredibly high-stakes illusion.
Like pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
Or the classic parlor trick, where a performer approaches a dining table fully set with fine china, crystal wine glasses, lit candles, the tablecloth trick.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that perfectly captures the execution of a tricky, fast maneuver that just leaves the audience totally amazed.
It's the perfect visual representation. The performer grabs the edge of the linen, the audience holds their collective breath anticipating total disaster, and with one violent, perfectly calculated yank, they rip the cloth away.
And without breaking a single glass.
Right, the glasses don't move, the candles stay lit. As an audience, we're hardwired to anticipate the crash. We see all the variables, and our brains calculate that failure is inevitable. When they execute the trick flawlessly, our brains experience a sudden release of tension.
It's like a linguistic dopamine hit.
Exactly. So today, pulling it off means succeeding in doing something considered extremely difficult, risky, or highly unlikely to work out. You use it to describe a massive surprise victory or a dangerous stunt.
Which is the ultimate vocabulary for high stakes and bold choices. The source material brings up Tom Cruise, which is the perfect real name example.
Oh, absolutely. The example of him sticking himself to the outside of a real flying airplane for the Mission Impossible movie perfectly encapsulates the necessary variables for this phrase.
Because of the absolute risk, you have freezing temperatures, the potential for mechanical failure, runway debris.
And despite serious doubts from fans and stunt coordinators who were openly vocal about the astronomical level of risk, everyone is looking at the metaphorical table of crystal glasses and thinking this is going to end in a disaster.
But Cruise didn't just survive. He delivered this iconic cinematic sequence. He managed to completely pull it off.
He completely pulls it off. And, the sources point out this concept applies beautifully to fashion, too.
Wait, really? Fashion?
Yeah. If someone walks onto your red carpet wearing a crazy avant-garde outfit, a bold garment with clashing patterns that 99% of people would look utterly foolish wearing, they are taking a massive reputational risk.
So the fashion critics are the audience waiting for the glasses to shatter.
Exactly. But if that person actually looks good and has the confidence to make the chaotic outfit work, then they defy the odds. You would turn to your friend and say, I cannot believe they pulled that outfit off.
Okay, let's test the parameters of this phrase, Dave.
Let's do it.
So what does this all mean for my morning routine? If I successfully toast a bagel for breakfast without burning it, or manage to tie my shoelaces on the first try, did I pull it off?
I mean, no. Absolutely not.
Not even a little bit.
No, you absolutely should avoid using this phrase for simple, everyday routine tasks. Remind yourself that the phrase requires a high level of doubt, difficulty, or risk.
Because if I use it for tying my shoes, I just sound ridiculous.
You sound incredibly sarcastic or overly dramatic. It subtly implies that you thought you were incompetent and just got lucky. Like, you wouldn't tell a veteran cardiovascular surgeon who just finished a standard scheduled bypass that she pulled it off.
Because it implies we doubted her ability to do her normal job.
Completely. The audience isn't holding their breath waiting for a disaster. They are trusting in her established expertise. You must reserve pull it off for scenarios characterized by real doubt and risk.
That distinction changes everything. It proves that learning vocabulary isn't just about memorizing definitions. It's about understanding the specific tones of these phrases.
Right. Knowing when to use them and when not to.
So, to recap the journey of this episode, we've contrasted two drastically different approaches to high-stakes situations. We started with the heavy, serious pressure of bearing on.
Yes, the inescapable gravity of a situation, the language of burden and consequence pushing down on you.
And we contrasted that with the miraculous, risk-defying success of pulling it off, the tablecloth maneuver. Defying the odds and securing a shocking victory anyway.
Understanding that bear on is never for lighthearted moments, and pull it off is never for routine chores. That's what helps you communicate with much more precision and flair in English.
You give the listener the ability to feel the crushing weight of the challenge and the adrenaline of the escape.
It is the ultimate shortcut to sounding both sophisticated and completely natural.
And analyzing these phrases leaves us with an interesting concept to ponder as we wrap up. Next time you feel the heavy expectations of work or life bearing on you,
what bold, unexpected move can you plan right now to ensure you pull off a massive victory?